UFC Fight Night Pérez is this weekend. I'm going to give you a prediction breakdown of all 14 fights on this card, starting with Bolaji versus Chris Duncan. This fight's going to be, well, I don't want to say it's interesting because it's not like two top prospects going against each other. I do like Bolaji, and I do think he's going to win this one by finish, by KO. The thing with this matchup is Chris Duncan, he is pretty solid, I will say, but I do think Bolaji's style will do very well against Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan can wrestle, he can grapple a little bit, and I can see him potentially trying that early on against Bolaji, but Bolaji is very strong, very athletic, has a lot of power in his hands, and I think he's just going to be able to catch Chris Duncan pretty early on in this fight and actually win relatively early as well. I think maybe first round finish. I think you probably get a decent scrap out of Chris Duncan as well, and I think that's just going to be Chris Duncan's downfall because Chris Duncan's a little bit more patient on the feet, especially stand up, very patient. He's going to pick his shots, kind of go after the legs, but Bolaji, again, also kind of patient. However, he's like very wild with the shots. Like he'll put everything into him, has a lot of power. And again, I think he can catch Chris Duncan on the chin. So I am going to go with Bolaji here. Chris Duncan has burnt me a little bit in the past, I will say. Well, I guess he hasn't burnt me. I picked Charlie Campbell, and Charlie Campbell burnt me. But he's definitely an interesting fighter. However, I do think he's going to get finished early here. That's all I'm going to say here. Bolaji, first round finish by TKO. I think he ends up catching Chris Duncan on the chin. Chris Duncan's chin, I don't know if I trust too much. It's been a little bit wavery here and there, so I'm just going to end up with the younger fighter who's a lot more athletic, who I do think can get up from some of the takedown attempts from Chris Duncan if this fight does pass the first round a little bit, and Chris Duncan needs to look for takedowns, but I think early on, Chris Duncan's going to want to stand, and I think Oki can catch him on the feet. So let's move on. We have Nora Cornolle versus Jacqueline Cavalcanti. A lot of people are taking Cornolle. I don't even know how to say her name, I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to call her Nora. I'm going to go Cavalcanti in this fight. From what I saw from Nora, she didn't look too great. She looked a little sloppy. I know she had like a pretty solid finish, but it was actually a pretty boring fight. I was skipping a lot through it. It ended up in a clinch quite a bit in her last fight against Melissa Mullins. She ended up getting like a nice knee to the body that hurt her pretty badly, and then followed up with a head kick, which actually looked pretty nice. Like if you saw the finish, you're like, oh wow, this sequence looks pretty good. But outside of that, either she was super tired because she is one of the bigger female fighters. Like she's pretty strong, and she did tire out pretty quickly. But I think Cavalcanti, after watching her last fight against Josiana Nunes, I know she only won by split decision, but I feel like she's able to stay out of like pretty rough territory when it comes to Josiana Nunes, who's a lot smaller. It's a lot harder to avoid her shots because she is a little bit tall. Like she is so small, but she wings a lot of shots, similar to like Andrade. But again, I do think Josiana Nunes does cover a little bit more distance in her shots. But Jacqueline Cavalcanti, I think she did do a good job at managing distance, kind of tapping at the legs and just being a little bit more frustrating. I think she can just outpoint Cornolle in this way. I don't see Cornolle getting the finish here, so I'm going to go Cavalcanti. It is a women's MMA fight. Anything can happen. I don't mind either of these fighters winning, but I'm going to end up going with Cavalcanti. I think she's just a little bit more technical, looks a little bit better skill-wise. So let's move on. We have Daniel Barez versus Victor Altamirano. A lot of people are going Altamirano. I think I am going to stick with Altamirano as well. I think he is a little bit of a better wrestler than, say, like a Rafael Filho. And Rafael Filho was able to find the takedown and get the submission eventually, even though he's getting torn up by Daniel Barez. And Daniel Barez actually looked pretty good on the feet, and that's what does worry me about this fight, because I can see Daniel Barez easily winning this one. His last fight was, what, a year ago? So he could be making a little bit of improvements. He's almost 36, so like the odds of him maybe coming into an injury and not really upgrading his skill and kind of depleting a little bit physically are probably pretty high. But I will say Victor Altamirano is a very awkward fighter. I do think that's going to help him into this fight, and I can see him just kind of pinning down Barez maybe eventually tiring out as this fight goes on. I'm just going to go with Altamirano. Tough dude. I think he can. I mean, he went to a split decision with Felipe Dos Santos, and now Felipe Dos Santos, I believe, did he go to a split decision with Manel Cap? I know it was a pretty close decision. So either Felipe Dos Santos and Manel Cap are completely overrated, or Victor Altamirano is pretty solid. I guess he did lose to Andre Lima, who's not horrible, but I'm going to go with Victor Altamirano. I think he's just really tough, really awkward fighter. I think he can take down Barez eventually. I think he does have a little bit better takedowns as well. It's just what he does with it is a little bit more interesting here. I think it does go to a decision, but it does a little bit worry me what Barez can do on the feet. But I'm going to end up going with Altamirano in this fight by decision. 29-28, maybe 30-27. Let's move on. We have Ailín Pérez versus Darya. Oh, God. Zheleznyakova. Oh, God. Oh, no. Zheleznyakova is how I'm going to say that one. I'm going to go with Ailín Pérez. Darya is not very good off of her back. Like, she can get taken down relatively easily. And Ailín Pérez likes to take down when fighters kind of just stall out on the ground a little bit. She did get a decision against Jocelyn Edwards, who's a lot bigger than she is. She's a lot thicker as well. Well, I don't know how much thicker. But Ailín Pérez is just going to wrestle the crap out of Darya, hold her down on the ground. I think she likes to call herself like the female Khabib. I may be wrong there. And she did kind of give like her twerk dust to Merab, and maybe that was some good luck. So maybe she's going to give the good fortune into this fight the following 2 weeks after Merab won. But I'm just going to go Ailín Pérez by decision. Takes her down, kind of just controls her down on the ground. A little bit of a more boring fight, but it is going to be in France, so maybe they'll have some interesting chance while it's going on. I don't know. This fight, I think it's probably going to be a little bit on the more boring side, but I do think Ailín Pérez is probably just going to maul Darya in this fight. So let's move on. We have Taylor Lapilus versus Vince Morales. Vince Morales is actually coming back into the UFC here after going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, how many fights did he go on a winning streak to get back into the UFC? Because he's in the UFC for a little bit. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights. Eventually beating Hunter Azure, who I do believe was on Tough, I think a couple years ago with like the Connor and Chandler season. Ended up winning a belt in that fight as well and got a Peruvian necktie. So he's pretty solid on the ground, I will say. Does have some pretty decent stand-up. I will say Taylor Lapilus is a lot better on the feet. And one thing I will say about Lapilus and his future fights as well is that he does have good takedown defense. However, if you pressure and work on that takedown defense, not necessarily takedown defense, but if you pressure and start combining your takedowns a lot more, his takedown defense tends to not be as good as it is towards like the beginning of a fight. But I don't think Vince Morales is going to go out there and spam takedowns on Taylor Lapilus. I think this is just going to be more of a technical fight. Taylor Lapilus is going to stay on the outside, be a little bit more technical, pick his shots. I just think he's going to be able to cover a little bit more distance, kind of pick his shots, land the cleaner shots, and do a little bit more damage than Vince Morales. So, and Vince Morales is almost 34 years of age, so he's getting up there in age. This is that bantamweight as well. Taylor Lapilus will have a 3-inch reach advantage, which I do think will help him here. Vince Morales does have some nice momentum. I mean, Lapilus did just beat Stamen, but he also did lose to Basharat, who's also pretty good. So I will say I think Lapilus is just a little bit more of a higher skill in this fight with the higher reach. Going to be a little bit more technical, and I think he's going to land the better shots compared to what Vince Morales will do. So I'm going to go Lapilus. I don't think he gets a finish over Vince Morales. Maybe it's a 29-28 decision. I can also see it being 30-27 if he just minorly outlands him. But I don't think he's going to get taken down by Vince Morales unless Vince Morales is really going after the takedown. So I am going to go with Taylor Lapilus by decision, probably 29-28. Let's move on. We have Ľudovít Klein versus Roosevelt Roberts. I'm going to go with Ľudovít Klein here. I think he's just really explosive. I mean, has some really nice combinations as well. I think he's just going to tear up the legs of Roosevelt Roberts, kind of just pressure and kind of be a little bit more calm, pick his shots, and then once he sees Roosevelt Roberts kind of wilt a little bit, he's going to go after a little bit more here. And I do think he's going to be able to find a shot to hurt Roosevelt Roberts pretty badly and get the TKO. I think probably in the second round. I don't think this is going to be an early finish. I guess second round's like midway through the fight, but I'm going to say mid to late second round TKO for Ľudovít Klein. I think he just wears on the legs, lands a couple of decent shots up top, and I think it does kind of get the attention of Roberts a little bit, kind of stun him a little bit. But I do think Ľudovít Klein gets the finish in the second round. That's all I really have to say. Roosevelt Roberts, I was rooting for him on Tough during the Chandler Connor season, but he also lost during it. He was actually my favorite for most of that season until I can't remember even who he lost to. That season was so rough. I mean, if they had the last season with Grasso and Shevchenko, those fighters on that season would have been a lot better. But he fought a guy in Mateusz Rebecki who ended up getting an armbar on him, and he's also pretty powerful. pretty tough as well. The pressure fighter. I think Ľudovít Klein gets this one done. 29 years of age as well. Going to be younger. Will have a half-inch reach disadvantage, but I do think he gets the finish. A lot more power. Very explosive. I think he gets it done. Let's move on. We have Oumar Sy versus Woon Jung. I'm going to go Oumar Sy. He's what? Almost 29 years of age. 83 inches of reach. We'll have what is this? A 5.5-inch reach advantage in this fight, which is pretty big. I don't think this is going to stay on the feet, though. I was pretty big on Woon Jung, or Woon Jung, whatever the hell his name is. It changed, I guess. I was pretty big on his wrestling because he was kind of ragdolling like a William Knight, like a big, beefy, like bodybuilder. I won't even say bodybuilder, but William Knight, I mean, he was like in heavyweight weight for a little bit. So, and he was dragging him around, like tossing him around. But then he also got his back taken by like a Carlos Ulberg and got finished by rear naked choke. Oumar Sy, if he's getting finished by Carlos Ulberg by rear naked choke, he's going to get finished by Oumar Sy by rear naked choke. And Oumar Sy is a pretty good grappler as well. I think he just takedowns Woon Jung and gets the rear naked choke. I'm just going to be honest. Oumar Sy is just incredible grappler. Very long as well. They're both 6'4", but again, his reach is absolutely insane. I think he can tie up Woon Jung here and get the finish by submission. So I was pretty behind Woon Jung after at least... the Dustin Jacoby fight. I picked him there. I can't remember if I picked him against Devin Clark, and I definitely didn't pick him against Carlos Ulberg, but he's kind of been on a pretty rough losing streak. So I'm going to go Oumar Sy, rear naked choke finish, first round submission. Let's move on to the next fight. We have Ailín Cutelaba versus Ivan Erslan. In my opinion, I think this is kind of just a coin toss. Ailín Cutelaba is pretty hit or miss, and most recently it's been very much a miss. Let's be honest, Ryan Spann, Johnny Walker, Kenny Nzechukwu in the first round, or at least early in the first round, he tends to look really good, and then he just runs into something where he just ends up getting caught, or he just tires out a little bit more, or the game plan just doesn't seem to be working. Like I don't understand exactly what it is. I guess he made it to a decision against Felipe Lins, but I'm gonna have to go with Ivan Erslan. I mean, he has decent defense in terms of striking, but let's be real here as well. Most of his fights are only going 1 round, 2 rounds, 1 round. Like last time, what was this? I guess the last time he was in a decision was 2022, but look at all these first round finishes, first round losses as well. I can see this fight going either way. I'm going to be honest. I think if this fight does end up going outside the first somehow, I may lean a little bit to Ivan Erslan, but they both got some pretty solid hands. We know Ailín Cutelaba has good wrestling, very explosive, decent hands, but as the fight goes on, he starts to not do so well. So I don't even know, because Ailín Cutelaba is still kind of UFC level, still beat Tanner Boser when he moved down, if that really means anything. We'll have a 0.2 inch reach advantage. I don't know. I'm going to go Ivan Erslan. I think maybe he just has better striking defense and maybe he can take advantage of Ailín Cutelaba. I'm not going to fight anybody if they pick someone like Ailín Cutelaba in this fight. I'm just going to go with Ivan Erslan. He's 14-3. I don't even know. KSW fighter, so he's fighting some decent competition. But like, I don't know if I can even trust Ailín Cutelaba. I think it comes down more to that. Can I trust Ailín Cutelaba? I think Ivan Erslan's defense is just decent enough to get through this fight, even though I have seen him get kind of caught, like trying to scrap a little bit. So I don't know. If he starts scrapping, the worst thing Ivan Erslan can do is early in this fight try and get to a scrap, and then he just ends up getting caught and finished up on the ground. Kind of just play a more patient game, be a little bit more technical with Ailín Cutelaba till it gets like the late part of the first round, maybe into the second round, then you can kind of do your thing. But I guess even Ivan Erslan doesn't really make it past the first round. So I'm going to have to go Ivan Erslan. Can't really trust Ailín Cutelaba at this point. 6'3" as well. Let's move on to the main card. Up the card, we have Ziam versus Matt Frevola. I am going to go with Matt Frevola. The thing with this fight is I see more finishing potential with Matt Frevola than I do for Ziam. And Matt Frevola also comes from a team at Ray Longo, where he trains with Sterling, Merab, and those guys are pretty heavy wrestlers. I know they're bantamweights. So, and this guy's a lightweight, or I guess Sterling's now a featherweight, but he's a pretty big featherweight. So, he's got some decent wrestling, and we've seen him have decent wrestling as well. I think he can pretty much out-wrestle for Ziam, take him down. I don't know how good his grappling is. Maybe he can kind of hold down for Ziam and beat him up there, but even then, Matt Frevola on the feet has a lot of power, is a little bit more wild. You do kind of worry about his chin a little bit, but for Ziam, he's not really finishing anybody. I do think he's pretty good. And I think that Terrence McKinney loss didn't age pretty well at all, even this one. But Mikhail Figlak he beat, which is actually a pretty solid win to have. Jai Herbert, good win to have as well. Claudio Puelles, however you say his name, an okay win. I mean, like Puelles didn't actually look good at all before this, which is kind of worrying. I think he took like a year off or whatever. Ended up losing anyways to Ziam, but he was able to take down Ziam, and I didn't even think Puelles' takedowns were pretty good coming into that fight. So how good is Ziam takedown defense-wise? I'm not too sure, but I do trust at least a little bit Matt Frevola's takedowns. He did lose to Benoit Saint-Denis about 10 months ago, but before then was able to chin Drew Dober, which is almost unheard of, because I think even Gene Silva was beating him up pretty badly. Did he end up getting the finish over? I can't remember. Did he get the finish over Drew Dober? Gene Silva, he did as a doctor stoppage, but Matt Frevola was like the only person to finish Drew Dober by finish on the feet. So I'm going to go Matt Frevola here. I think he has too much power on the feet. I don't see Ziam finishing Matt Frevola on the feet either. He just doesn't have that kind of power. Maybe Frevola's chin is really that rough if he ends up getting finished. But I do think he's a good enough wrestler to kind of pin down Ziam if he needs to. I don't mind Frevola kind of just winning this fight off TKO, kind of landing a couple times on Ziam. Ziam kind of just covers up and the ref steps in with just top control, him kind of just posturing up a little bit and just raining down punches a little bit more. Maybe he can get the back of Ziam and try to land there as well. I think he just ends up being a TKO victory. Maybe late first, second round TKO. I do think Ziam is pretty good. I think just the style matchup is a little bit more rough here. He does have a 4-inch reach advantage. He's only, 27 and a half years of age. So he can't upset this fight, but I just need to see a little bit more finishing-wise in his fighting style. Because, look, all of these are decision. He got, a submission over Yassine Beldaj, and that's not even in the UFC. That was right before the UFC. All his losses, or not all of them, but he lost to Terrence McKinney by rear naked choke. I mean, it's just he's just not getting finishes at all when he ends up winning. So I'm gonna go on the side of the guy who was the finisher, late first round, second round TKO on this one. So we have Morgan Charriere versus Gabriel Miranda. I'm gonna go Morgan Charriere. He's pretty well rounded. Pretty good on the feet, very technical as well. Does have some good wrestling defense, pretty decent on the ground as well. And the thing with Gabriel Miranda is if you can't land a takedown, he's pretty much screwed. I do think Morgan Charriere is going to land pretty well, and Gabriel Miranda is pretty hittable also. Like, this isn't Shane Young. He's almost 34 and a half years of age. He will have a 2-inch reach advantage, but Morgan Charriere is 29 years of age. Has some decent wins as well. Came into the UFC and fought Shepe Mariscal and took it to a split decision. I think that was he even got like a fight of the night bonus, but he's pretty well rounded, pretty technical. I think he's going to unload on Gabriel Miranda. I'm thinking a first round TKO finish, standing TKO against Miranda, because Miranda has it's a decent chin. I don't know if he's going to get flatlined, but I think he'll probably finish him up on the ground with TKO strikes. So I'm going to go Morgan Charriere. First round finish. Maybe it gets past the 2.5 minute mark. I don't know if I would even play with over-unders on this one, but I think Morgan Charriere kind of beats him up on the feet. Gabriel Miranda does a panic shoot, doesn't get it, and just gets finished up on the ground. So I'm going to go Morgan Charriere, first round TKO. Let's move on. We have Kevin Jousset versus Brian Battle. This one is kind of a closer one in my opinion. Kevin Jousset is actually pretty solid on the feet. I think he is hittable in certain ways, like his head stays on the center line, but his defense is like decent enough with his hands where it's hard for him to get caught. And with Brian Battle, who uses like a lot of head kicks, uses his legs quite a bit, and he even uses his hands pretty good as well. Got a no contest against Angelusa, and he's pretty much beating him up relatively badly in that fight. But it might be a little tough for Brian Battle to land on Kevin Jousset in this one. He will have a 2-inch reach advantage, which I do like coming into this fight. And he also has, I believe, a wrestling and grappling advantage. So if he's able to mix in some of the takedowns, kind of get Kevin Jousset thinking a little bit more, not letting him get comfortable kind of in that range that he likes to sit in then punching range, Kevin Jousset, even though Brian Battle will have a 2-inch reach advantage, he kind of just does like a good job at keeping a good range on the feet. And I think he does have a potential to land Brian Battle, but I think Brian Battle needs to mix in the takedowns. I don't see a KO for Brian Battle here over Kevin Jousset. I just think it's going to be a little bit tough with his style, but mixes in the takedowns, lands shots, kind of pushes them up against the fence a little bit more, makes it a little bit more dirty for Kevin Jousset, who is a city kickboxing guy. I think he's going to be able to win this fight, probably by decision. So I'm going to go 29-28. I don't mind a 30-27 either, but I'm going to go 29-28. I think maybe early on, Jousset maybe can land a couple of good shots and at least outland him in the first round, and Brian Battle not do anything significant grappling-wise. But I think as this fight goes on, you'll see him implement it a little bit more. And he's a bigger guy for welterweight as well, so I will put that out there. It's not like middleweight Brian Battle. This guy's a welterweight, pretty big dude. 6'1", they're similar in height as well, but will have a 2-inch reach advantage. So I think he's going to be able to land a little bit more in boxing range, shoot in, make it a little bit closer, punch him up against the fence, separate, and just get Kevin Jousset thinking about it a little bit more, maybe even control him on the ground a little bit. So I'm going to go Brian Battle, 29-28 decision. I don't think he gets a finish. So let's move on. We have William Gomez versus Joanderson Brito. William Gomez is a decent, I think, what is he, a kickboxer, I want to say. I might be a little bit wrong there. He might be Muay Thai or whatever. But I'm pretty sure he's a kickboxer. But he has some pretty nice strikes on the feet. He's pretty fast as well. Has some decent power. But Joanderson Brito is just an absolute monster. I mean, this dude he has a lot of power in his hands. He is a little bit more crazy with the strikes. I will say William Gomez has probably better technique, but Joanderson Brito, a lot of power in his hands, really good grappler as well, and that's just going to be really tough for Gomez, who is going to be the longer fighter here at 6 feet tall. Joanderson Brito is going to be 5'8", so if he wanted to shoot in takedowns, it's going to be a lot easier because he's more towards the waist of William Gomez, and William Gomez wants to hit Joanderson Brito. He's kind of got to shorten himself up a little bit more. If he wants to use kicks, I guess he can do that as well, but I think Joanderson Brito can potentially land on Gomez here when he's kicking, maybe go above and kind of land with like a hook, or even go to the body of Gomez and kind of tear him up there as well. But I do think Joanderson Brito does win this one with the grappling. I think he can beat up the body a little bit more here, kind of push William Gomez off balance against the cage, maybe take him down for a second and kind of just hop on the back and do either a standing rear naked choke, or hop on the back and kind of pull him down to the ground and get him with a rear naked choke there. So I'm going to go first round finish for Joanderson Brito here. Again, very powerful, very, very good grappling. He doesn't really use it too much. I mean, he does have some nice submissions. He'll use it like every other fight, I guess. Let's be real. But, I mean, when you see Joanderson Brito, you recognize his power, but he's a really, really, really good grappler. So I'm going Joanderson Brito, rear naked choke. I'm going to say standing rear naked choke. William Gomez tries to get up, but I think he just locks it in. I think Brito is just going to be way too strong for him, and I think the height kind of benefits him in this fight as well. So I'm going to go Joanderson Brito by finish, rear naked choke in the first round. Let's move on to the co-main event. We have Nassourdine Imavov versus Brendan Allen. I'm going to go with Nassourdine Imavov. I think between the two prospects, Nassourdine Imavov has impressed me a little bit more. They kind of have beaten the fraud check test of middleweight. I know Nassourdine Imavov has lost to Strickland, and he got the no contest against Chris Curtis, even though Imavov, I think, was pretty much beating him up pretty badly in that fight. But he did lose to Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland did come in on short notice, and I think the fight did get moved up to a catchweight or whatever. You can say he was kind of checked in that one, but since then, I think he's actually looked a lot better. 28 years of age, 20 and a half years of age, they're kind of similar in age, actually. But I think Nassourdine Imavov has kind of pulled away from guys like Brendan Allen in terms of how good they are as a prospect. Because Brendan Allen was kind of I don't even know, he's finishing guys in their own style. Weirdly enough, A lot of people are picking him. I mean, even against Jacob Malkoun, that fight was pretty close. I think betting-wise, were people taking Malkoun, or at least the fight was pretty close. Andre Muniz, he submitted Andre Muniz, submitted Paul Craig, was able to submit Bruno Silva. I think he even dropped him in that fight. Like, it's just absolutely insane stuff. And then he kind of has like a close matchup with Chris Curtis in like a 5-round fight. So when I see Nassourdine Imavov, I think he's just really tricky to fight. I know he has like a weird loss to who was it? Phil Hawes, where he did get taken down a couple times. It was a majority decision, but Nassourdine Imavov keeps a really good range on the feet. Really tricky to get inside with them. I think even takedown-wise, his takedown defense has gotten a lot better. This is a 3-round fight, so I'm not worried about him kind of tiring out with the grappling if Brendan Allen decides to grapple, which I think he will, because I think that's the best way to kind of close off some of the distance that Nassourdine Imavov will have. But he has some decent elbows, will teep to the body, and again, we'll kind of just play that range style where he's going to jab a little bit more as well. I think it's just going to be really tough for Brendan Allen to get on the inside, especially in a 3-round fight. I think it benefits Nassourdine Imavov a little bit here. So I'm going to go with Nassourdine Imavov. I think he's just going to outland Brendan Allen. I don't think he finishes Brendan Allen, but I do think he just outlands him. 29-28, I can also see a 30-27 where Brendan Allen just kind of gets hurt a couple times in the early round and just can't really do too much as the fight goes on. So I'm going to go 29-28 though. Nassourdine Imavov, I think Brendan Allen will have moments. I don't think he's going to rock Imavov, but I think potentially he could get there with takedowns early on. But I just think as this fight goes on, Imavov is just going to defend the takedowns a little bit better. He's going to do a little bit too much damage to the body of Brendan Allen. And I think Brendan Allen's just going to get a little bit more frustrated in the fight. So I'm going to go Nassourdine Imavov, 29-28, 30-27 decision. Let's move on to the main event. Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis. I hate picking against Moicano, but I have to do it again. I'm going to go with Benoit Saint-Denis here. Moicano, here's the thing. Drew Dober was piecing him up, and he was able to find the takedown. This is like a last-ditch thing. Like, I was surprised he's able to do that because I can't remember if I picked Moicano against Drew Dober or not. But he's able to find the takedown eventually there and do pretty well and kind of ride it out on the ground. But it was looking very rough for him. He's kind of getting rocked all over the place in that fight. And even Jalen Turner, like, if Jalen Turner wasn't, I'll just say, if Jalen Turner wasn't a retard and went for the finish right as he knocked him down on the ground, he would have won that fight. But Renato Moicano cannot afford to lose and found his way back into the fight and finished Jalen Turner, which is pretty impressive. But Renato Moicano, man, I don't know about Benoit Saint-Denis. He's pretty good on the feet, a lot of power. He's wild. And I just don't think Renato Moicano's striking is really there for someone like Benoit Saint-Denis where you can catch him and kind of put him out cold or anything like that. In his last fight against Dustin Poirier, he had a lot of success. And I think without the staph infection on his forehead, he probably would have done a lot better. And he was doing extremely well against Dustin Poirier. It's just he eventually tired out. And I don't think he would have taken damage as well with the antibiotics he was on with the staph infection. So coming into this fight, Benoit Saint-Denis is going to have the power advantage, striking advantage. On the ground, he's extremely strong. I think he can get out of any position against Renato Moicano. I don't think Renato Moicano is going to submit him. If anything, I think Benoit Saint-Denis can have moments where he can take down Renato Moicano and kind of control him on the ground if he really wanted to. This is a 5-round fight, so maybe if this fight goes in 4, 5, maybe 3 rounds, we'll see Benoit Saint-Denis kind of tire out a little bit, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Like we've seen Renato Moicano his last couple fights get landed on, and he's just been wobbled pretty badly, even almost went down. Like if it was Chris Taglioni, that fight would have been over against Jalen Turner, you know what I mean? But I think if Benoit Saint-Denis rocks Renato Moicano, which I think can definitely happen, especially early on, I think he's going to get the finish. And I just don't see where Renato Moicano can control a Benoit Saint-Denis on the ground, especially early on, and avoid the damaging strikes on the feet. And I think it'll just always go back to the feet. I don't see Renato Moicano surviving it. So I am going to have to go with Benoit Saint-Denis. I don't mind either of these fighters winning. If Renato Moicano kind of pulls this one out of his ass, I will be extremely impressed. But Benoit Saint-Denis is just way too dangerous everywhere from Renato Moicano. I just don't see him getting it done unless he somehow survives towards the end of this fight in like the 3rd or 4th or 5th round, where Benoit Saint-Denis just tires himself out from trying to finish Renato Moicano. I just don't see it happening. I do really like Renato Moicano, but I just can't pick him here. Benoit Saint-Denis is just way too dangerous. So this is my pick, or first round finish. I'll say TKO for Benoit Saint-Denis. I think he just wobbles him everywhere. I don't think Renato Moicano is going to be able to land a takedown on Benoit Saint-Denis, especially early on. I think Benoit Saint-Denis, first round TKO. There's my pick. Let me know who you guys have down below in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.